Hello, everyone. So I'm back today, and I'm here to give my thoughts on the Nick Cassavetes directed action movie God is a Bullet, which releases on July 11th to rent on demand, or I guess rent on DVD. So before I get my thoughts, I just wanted to remind y'all to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, comment on the video, all the videos. It helps us a lot and it helps us grow and all that other stuff. Also, go follow us on social media at comicboys underscore on Twitter, TikTok. That's what I meant to say. Threads, we're there now. Facebook, I guess, because we're doing some cool stuff on our social media, including like giveaways for free movies and some other cool stuff. So you definitely don't want to miss that stuff. Plus, some stuff on the TikTok we're doing a little more. But yeah, now into the video, I guess. So God is a Bullet is a movie that attempts to do three distinct things. The first is it attempts this deep philosophical kind of conversation about nihilistic kind of thought and nihilism. Then the second thing is it tries to have this to be this elite action movie, in the vein of like a Sicario or a John Wick, right? Which is varying degrees of elite, I understand, but still in that same kind of tier. And third, they try to have these kind of shock and awe big character moments, where you learn this huge thing about a character. And so I want to talk about each of those three things that it attempts to do and how well they did actually do it, because I think it'll help kind of explain my thoughts on this movie. When it comes to the first part, they definitely attempt to emphasize the nihilistic thought, sometimes at the detriment of the actual plot, because it definitely slows down the movie and kind of makes you like a little bit bored. I don't think it would be, I would say all bored, but a little, it kind of slows it down a little bit. And it kind of made the movie maybe a little bit longer than needed to be as well, or at least it felt like that, again, because the pacing was a little bit slower than maybe you would have liked in a movie, which is about, which is kind of actiony in the nature of the movie, right? And this in turn also hurts the second goal, right, which is to be an action movie and to be an elite action movie in that tier. And this was more successful. They did do a decent job with this at certain points, and was probably, I guess, significantly more successful than the first goal, because when they were actiony, they didn't hurt and I'm going to use actiony as if it were a real word, but they don't actually hurt the plot, or hurt the kind of pacing. It actually helps the pacing. So I think they actually did that more successfully when they did do that, and when they actually achieved that. And honestly, I think, outside the final fight scene, which, I had some issues with, but it was still significantly better than, I guess, like, based on the reasons I'll give in a second, you would expect it to be. I think that there is definitely a lack of action, which, again, as I was talking about, they have these kind of, deep philosophical conversations more than they have, like, actual fighting, which, again, seems really, really weird to me. And I think this would have been helped with one thing, and if they actually chose an action director instead of a rom-com director or romance director, right? Because the one thing they did, which I got to give them credit for, is they did choose the cinematographer as someone who worked on Spectre, the James Bond movie, which is obviously very good for insight, or gives you good insight into how to kind of film good action. Now, that being said, when you pick the director of The Notebook to direct the movie, you kind of lose a little bit of that, maybe a little bit more, right? Because you look at Spectre, right? Spectre, obviously, the person who I think, based on his other work, you would probably give a lot of the credit for how good that movie was, is Sam Mendes, right? And I think when you pick the director of The Notebook instead of or even, look at the last few Mission Impossible movies, you have Chris McQuarrie, or John Wick, which is directed by a former stunt performer and stunt coordinator in Chad Stahelski, right? So, even a movie like Sicario 2 had an action director who went on to direct something like Without Remorse, right? Like, you need, I feel like you look at these kind of movies in that tier, and the tier above and in the tier below, you could argue, because I would argue Without Remorse was a tier below this movie. I think having an action director does really, really help. And when you have someone who's less experienced with action, at least within what they've directed, it does kind of, you can see it, right? You look at some action scenes, and I think, as much as Marvel is very, very terrible at their action scenes, I think one of their all-time best ones is in The Winter Soldier, and it is the elevator scene, right? And you look at that, and you look at the Russo brothers, kind of what they gained from that. And I think you saw, okay, look, these are action directors who can direct action, and so we're going to trust them. And the whole Winter Soldier had fight scene after fight scene, which was just really well done, right? Because I think fight scenes are a few things, right? You have to get character moments in fight scenes. You have to get, good non-awful camera movement and camera angles and all that other stuff in fight scenes, because, a bad filmed fight scene can, either make you sick or completely turn off the movie, like disinterest you in the movie, right? But you also, again, have to do some actual, like, character development in a fight scene. It can't just be a fight for the sake of a fight, right? So there are a lot of elements to a fight scene. We've actually interviewed a stunt performer, and we talked a lot about fight scenes and what's involved in that. So you should definitely check that interview out. But I think there are a lot of different things within a fight scene, which, you do, again, have to give a lot of credit to the director, but also at the same time, you have to understand that there's a reason you have an action director to direct action. And I think this movie would have really benefited from a guy who knows action, right? Instead of someone who hasn't actually shown they know action, or, maybe based on what they've done, you don't think they can. Now, okay, if you did a good job, then maybe this is a different story. But I think because of how this movie unfolded, and, you just needed something else. Now, that being said, the third thing, obviously, is the flashy kind of character moments, and I think that this is also a little bit of a few and far between situation, and I think the main reason for that is because, you don't get you get a few good lines. There were some amazing lines of dialogue in this, but again, and I understand this was based off a book. I haven't actually read the book. I didn't learn it was based off a book until like 5 minutes before I clicked record, but, you can obviously, you can probably credit some of that to the book, but also I'm sure some of that had to do with the writing. And so, again, for someone who doesn't do action, he did a decent job even writing the movie. But again, he directed The Notebook. He didn't write The Notebook, but, overall, I think, this was a movie which gave us a lot of different things, and I think it wasn't all bad, obviously. I did enjoy watching it, and it is really just, it does what it sets out to do, I think, because I don't think it set out to necessarily be a groundbreaking action movie or even like a top-tier action movie. What it really does set out to do is be this weird hybrid of everything. And I think, again, like I say quite often, this is a movie, if you like action, you should probably watch, right? Or if you like action movies, you'll watch, because it is still enough of a movie, right? In that same vein, despite the flaws, that it is an enjoyable watch, right? Like Alon, I would tell him to watch this movie for sure, because this is in the vein of something, that he would enjoy. Even though, again, I don't, you can't go into it expecting it to be groundbreaking, right? But there's mediocre action movies all the time, which are still fun to watch, right? At the end of the day, that's what this is. This movie is just a fun watch. A fun, again, relatively, because it's not like funny, but it's, you get what I mean. It's a fun watch. It's something where you can just kind of turn your brain off, watch people do stuff. There's a little bit of a moment where you're like, okay, well, this feels a little long. Like toward the end, I was like, okay, feels like we've resolved this whole plot now. Do we have to really keep doing this? But other than that, again, it was a movie which, again, I found really enjoyable. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share your thoughts, follow us on social media, and of course, see you all next time. Bye.